Weren't as reach out and touch you. They weren't as emotional. And I was like, wow, I'm gonna send these back because they sound a little hard. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I have some speakers here that I was so curious about. The MoFi Mobile Fidelity SourcePoint 10 speakers designed by Andrew Jones. Now Andrew Jones just recently has designed a bunch of speakers for ELAC. He's no longer with ELAC, he's with MoFi, and the first speaker they put out is the SourcePoint 10. When I first saw these, I saw they were using dual concentric drivers. So you have your paper woofer and you have a silk dome tweeter right smack dab in the middle of that woofer. That makes everything more cohesive. It also makes speakers easier to place in the room. And I want to talk about these speakers today because I had really high hopes for them when I saw them launched and announced, and I thought they were beautiful. They have a mid-century modern vibe, right? I love the look of the baffle, the way it was designed. And I was like, $3,700. That seemed to me like a deal. I know I read online, a lot of people think it's way too expensive. Let me start off by saying I bought these with my own money. I bought them from Crutchfield.com. I knew they had a 60-day in-home trial kind of thing where if I didn't like them, I could send them back and get my money back. So I paid for these. These were not sent to me for a review. I don't have any relationship with MoFi, nor do I make a cent. If you go out, if 100 of you go out and buy this speaker, I make a big fat zero. So I want you to know up front, I am not biased in any way. I have speakers here that I paid a lot of money for, my Fleetwood Devilles. Wouldn't it be something if a pair of speakers 5-6 times less expensive matched or even beat them? That sounds crazy, right? And that didn't happen, by the way, but I'm going to tell you how close these get to my big money speakers. So let's talk about the MoFi SourcePoint 10s. So in the past, I've heard a couple of designs by Andrew Jones that sounded really lovely from ELAC. He also has a pair of Pioneer bookshelf speakers that are rather well known. He is known as these days as a legendary speaker designer, right? But with ELAC, he was kind of constrained. He had to keep to a certain price point, and ELAC had a lot of affordable models that came out. Now that he's with MoFi, MoFi said, well, let's open it up a little bit. Let's go bigger budget, see what you can do in this kind of range, right? So these are priced at $36.99 for a pair. They come in walnut or black. And Andrew Jones designed this speaker in a way that's different from most traditional speakers you see on the market. As I already mentioned, it uses a dual concentric driver. Now, a lot of people love dual concentric drivers. A lot of people have always said they sound the most pure, right? And I'm going to tell you the difference between the SourcePoint 10s and some Dynaudio Special 40s and my Fleetwood Devilles, right? Now, the Devilles shouldn't be compared to the SourcePoint 10 because they're 5 or 6 times the amount in retail cost. The Devilles are made in the USA. The MoFis are made in China. The Devilles have use all wood, right? Pennsylvania ash, and they torrefy that wood to ensure you will have no problems with shrinking, swelling, what have you, down the road or even decades down the road. Made in the USA, they have a lifetime warranty. The MoFis use veneer for the outside, which is much more cost effective. But when the speakers arrived, could not believe the size of the speaker, the build quality, the attention to detail. There's actually zero slop, zero mistakes. Everything looks really quality, at least on the outside, right? Compared to something like a Klipsch Heresy 4, which these are about the same size as, the finish on the veneer seems nicer than the Klipsch. But this is not a horn speaker. While not a horn speaker, it's still rated at 91 dB efficient. Means you can drive this with 20 watts per channel, or you can drive it with 1,000 watts per channel. So this is a very versatile speaker to drive. When they arrived in 2 big boxes, 1 speaker per box, right? I unpacked them, I placed them on my Dynaudio Stand 6 because they released these speakers, but yet they didn't release stands to put them on. And believe me, at 46 pounds each, these suckers need stands that are secure and solid. Now, I did read that MoFi has stands they created for these, and they should be available soon, but I wish they were available at launch, right? Because you buy these and you need a nice sturdy base to put them on. There's no feet on the bottom, so you don't want to scratch up the base. So on my Stand 6, which are pretty beefy stands, I have some padding so not to scratch the bottom. And it works, but I would highly recommend the stands they make for these speakers because on a smaller stand, they can be bumped into and knocked over, and that would cause a bad day for anyone. When I first hooked them up, I had my Luxman 595 ASE integrated hooked up with my DCS Lena DAC. And the sound was much sharper, much crispier, leaner in the upper mid-range, and bigger in the lower bass compared to my much more expensive Fleetwood Devilles. They weren't as reach out and touch you. They weren't as emotional. And I was like, wow, I'm going to send these back because they sound a little hard. And I don't like speakers with a recessed mid-range. Now, at that moment, I realized I didn't spend a ton of time setting them up because they're not attached to the stands and it's kind of a pain to try to move these big behemoths. But then I was like, well, before I return these and not review them, let me hook up Pass Labs amplification. So I pulled out the XP22 preamp, and Pass Labs just sent me an X250.8 to compare to the XA60.8s. And so I put that X250.8 in, which is one heck of a gorgeous amplifier. And I set up the speakers to where I thought they would sound the best, and I powered it on, and boom, there we go. Gone was that leanness in the upper mids. Gone was that hardness I was hearing. And what came out of the speakers was much more full and fluid. And I was getting that emotional impact. And then I was like, wait a minute. These sound an awful lot like my DeVilles right now, with a little bit bigger bottom end and a little bit more of an airy treble. And I was like, what the heck? These are $3,700. So I pulled Debbie in here and we listened for 2 or 3 hours, and she's like, these sound really, really good. And then she's asked me how much they were, and I said $36.99, and she's like, wow, that's amazing. So I agreed. So all of the people out there saying these are priced too high, absolutely not. The sound quality coming out of this box is rather special for the price. Now, I pulled out a Dynaudio Special 40, which is closer to the price range of the MoFi. And the Dynaudios, I love those speakers, but they are about 1/4, 1/5 the size of the MoFi, and therefore they're not filling the room in the same way. The bass is not as fleshed out, right? The mids are not so ever present in the room compared to the MoFi. The MoFi was doing some magic, and it's really something that has to be heard in the right setup. Again, when I had the Luxman 595 hooked up to them, I was ready to send them back. And the Luxman is the best integrated I've ever heard. But there's a thing called synergy I've talked about, where if you mismatch, right? Because amp A has a certain sound, amp B has a certain sound, speaker A has one sound. You got to match that sound with the amp. So with the Pass Labs setup, oh my goodness, they were sounding so, so good. I then decided I'm going to throw in a set amp. So I put in a 300B amp that has about 8 watts per channel, and they didn't sound nearly as good as the Pass Labs. I don't think the 8 watts was quite enough to really give me that jolt and that beauty that was coming from these speakers. I eventually switched back to the Past Labs, and I sat in here for 5 hours into the night till about 2:30 in the morning one night, and I just could not believe the sound I was hearing from them. I'll try my best to explain the sound of the SourcePoint 10 speakers. They are kind of direct, right? They come out at you, and they don't have as wide of a sound stage as the much more expensive DeVille's or even the Special 40s. But the sound stage it does have is very filled in, right? It's very filled in, and I love that the lower end is so prevalent and clean. And the mid-range is super clean as well, but it's so clean and clear. You can hear crackles and you can hear the information coming from the voice. And at the same time, there's a little bit of warmth there that the Past Labs is pumping in, right? And then you get to the treble, which is pretty extended and detailed, and you're starting to hear the imaging. And these things image like a champ. Not the biggest sound stage, but still a very large sound stage. They image front to back. They image left to right. They also come with really nice magnetic grills that are contoured to the front of the speaker. But I prefer to leave them naked because I think they look so cool with that big driver right in the middle. So there's detail. The mids are not quite the same as the DeVille's. The DeVille's have that throaty, full, forward mid-range, so the voices sound so real. The SourcePoint 10s have a really realistic vocal region, but it's a little bit leaner than the DeVille's. But you're gaining that treble extension. The DeVille's have a softer treble, which is more inviting and welcoming. If you put on some Diana Krall or Melody Gardot or Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin on the DeVille's, you feel like you're in a little club listening to them they're using like a tube microphone or something. It sounds beautiful. With the SourcePoint 10s, you're getting more of a clarity, more of a detailed presentation, but you're getting a lot of kick and impact. The dynamics on the SourcePoint 10 are absurdly good. I would say the dynamics are a notch up from the Fleetwood Deville's. So at the end of the day, I ended up adoring the SourcePoint 10s, and I said, there's no way I'm returning these. I'm going to keep these in here for a while, I think, because they're just such an exciting, big, bold, detailed, yet with some warmth and slam kind of presentation. And when you listen to so many pieces of gear as a reviewer, sometimes you can get bored with what you have long term. So it's nice to switch things out and keep my mind alive, right? And I have to say the MoFi SourcePoint 10s for me are an absolute grand slam, and here's why. The price, $36.99. You're not going to find speakers that look like this, that have this size, that are this beautiful, and sound this good for $36.99. I don't know where you're going to find a speaker like that. I've never heard one, but it's awesome. Now, the fact that they're made in China turns off a lot of people. I will say the camera I'm filming this on was made in China. The light that's lighting me was made in China. The iPhone that's in my pocket was made in China. The computer that I'm going to edit this on was made in China. Heck, I bet this shirt was made in China. So I don't have a bias against anything in HiFi. My vacuum was made in China. My TV was made in China. You see the point? Why would I have a bias against an audio product made in China when so much of what we use in our daily lives is made in China? What I like about it is that it was made in China. Therefore, it allows us more people to get into this speaker, because if it wasn't made in China, if this was made in America, for example, it'd be around $8,000, $8,500, and I firmly believe that. And you're just paying for where it was made. Just because it was made in China doesn't mean it was made in a subpar way. MoFi is the company behind it. Andrew Jones is the designer. I don't think they're going to let some shoddy construction ruin their business. So by it being made in China, we get this for an affordable price. I love that it comes with magnetic grills. I don't like that they did not, and this is a niggle, I wish they would have had the stands ready at launch, because people buying these, they're going to have a hard time placing them. If you just you can't place them on a shelf. They're way too big and heavy. If you do manage to fit them on a cabinet, you better put some pads under there so you don't scratch up the veneer on the bottom, right? Sometimes these veneers can scratch easily. That's been my experience. So they should have had the stands ready to go, and I think they should have packaged them as a bundle. You get the stands, because I feel stands that are properly made for this speaker is mandatory. So I'm hoping that they get those out quickly and that they're not too expensive. I think I've heard anywhere between $300 and $500 for the stands. So hopefully they do a good job on that. I'm sure that they will. I love that they come in its own separate box when shipped. It's very easy to remove from the box and pretty easy to set up, even when using these Dynaudio Stand 6 stands. I like that they're large. I like that they have a big, bold presence and that detail. I was listening to Dean Martin with the SourcePoint 10s, and his voice was dead center, and it was just, I heard every little crackle, right? And I thought I heard some noises like he was doing something with his hands, but at the same time, the bass was there. Now, I did something else. After I evaluated them as is, I added a REL S510 subwoofer. Now, I've never been a subwoofer guy for 2-channel Sirius music, but I've never heard a REL. And the way REL connects to your system makes all the difference. I'll have a review on that pretty soon here, but the REL S510 sub can seamlessly blend with just about any speaker and room, and it's almost like a natural extension of the speaker. The sub shouldn't call attention to itself. When I added the sub to fill in what the SourcePoint 10 can't bring, say under 40 hertz, right? 20 to 40 hertz, wow, what an experience. We could turn on some EDM or dance music, and just, it was like a dance party. Debbie was in here dancing, and I had some like different colored strobe lights on. She's like, it's just like a dance club. And the REL sub allowed for that. But even without the sub, these speakers sound lovely, and they have a pretty deep and present bass performance. It's not sloppy, right? These are fantastic speakers, bar none. So one of my favorite speakers I've heard in a long time. And that says a lot, because I've been able to hear some mighty impressive speakers. So the MoFi SourcePoint 10, the hype is real. Anyone out there trash talking these, I'm not sure why you would do that. They're priced right. They are designed beautiful. If you like that look, right? You might not like that old school look, but I happen to love it. But hey, look at all the gray in my beard, right? They sound lovely as long as you match up the amp correctly and set them up right. They can fill a large room with sound. They go really loud without distortion or anything like that. And they can play at low volume in a really rich, nice way. I can turn this system down to where it's, say I'm listening at 2 in the morning, so I don't want to wake up Debbie, and it's still full and fluid and beautiful. So things to know really quick. If you're looking at the SourcePoint 10, wait for the stands to become available. That's what I would recommend, unless you have a nice big stand to put them on. They are 46 pounds each. They are larger than my Fleetwood Devilles. They're about the size, not exact, about of a Heresy 4 that you have to put on a stand. 46 pounds each. They're very, very lovely speakers. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, thumbs up and subscribe. Feel free to share this video, and I'll have reviews coming soon of the REL S510 sub, the PassLabs X250.8, and the XP22 preamp, as well as a few other things. I have a set of Bucard P300s coming in. They're $1,500, I believe, speaker, and I'm looking forward to that, because I always want to find something that's more affordable that kicks above its weight, just like these SourcePoint 10s do. So have a good holiday, stay warm, and I'll see you guys really soon. Bye.